Welcome back to Speaking with Elvis Podcast. This is the podcast of anything communication and public speaking. That simply means that we are sharing ideas, we are sharing techniques and insight about public speaking and communication. And the goal is simply to make you a great communicator and a public speaker at that. And also, we are sharing in this podcast personal development, mindset, leadership. So it's about making you a better version of yourself, making you go to that next level of life, whether it is with your communication or with your life. In fact, that's what we're going to be discussing in this particular episode. This episode, the subject or the topic of this episode, is called the universal dream. What does that really mean, the universal dream? What it is, I'm sure that a lot of people have not heard of this concept of the universal dream. But in order to understand what the universal dream is, we are going to take a step back in something that many people are familiar with, and that is the American dream. Now, a lot of people, whether you live in America or even outside of America, have heard of the term the American dream. So let's define what is the American dream. What does it have to do with you and I, whether you live in the United States or not? So for me, for the past few years, I've conducted some kind of random survey. It's not a very structured survey, it's just random. When I say random is, I would just ask people at random. Depending on the time, it doesn't happen to be in a particular period of time. So it was in the past many years when I would meet somebody in America. So I would have a conversation with that people, with those people, and eventually we would touch on the subject of the American dream. And I would usually ask two questions. I would ask one question, another would be the following question. I would often ask people, especially American, even immigrants who are in America, so what is the American dream? They would answer me. If they would give me the answer, a lot of them would say the American dream is about maybe succeeding at what you do. It's about maybe ownership. It's about maybe having a good job, having a good retirement plan, the white picket fence that we know of, the classic definition of the American dream. So which means to them, the American dream is some level of socio-economic prosperity, which means the upward mobility. So the American dream, according to a lot of people, is about achieving success, and more so material success. That's what many people define as the American dream. Now, when I ask the following question, are you living your American dream or have you achieved your American dream? That's where the response is a little bit scattered. So for a lot of people, if I'm asking somebody who's done well for themselves, who really succeeded in that outside material success, definitely they would tell me that they are living the American dream or they have achieved their American dream. And I have to tell you that the number of those people is very less. But for the great majority, a lot of people believe that they are not living the American dream. Maybe they're still working on the American dream because everybody agrees that the American dream is some level of material success. As long as you are successful materially, that means you do have a good bank account. Maybe you do have home ownership. Maybe you have some cars in the garage. And I think at that moment, many people would believe to be living or have achieved their American dream. But I have encountered a small number of people who usually do believe that the American dream is just an illusion. Now, some of these people would be in the category of those who have not achieved that definition of American dream that many people have come to choose, which is the upward mobility, the material success. So some people, and usually a little bit in the older generation, they would think that the American dream is an illusion. And even the younger generation today, they don't think so much of such a thing as an American dream. But for the most part, the definition that many people give of the American dream is the outward success, the materialization of some kind of achievement that they have worked hard, they have what they need to eat, they can own their home, they have the house, maybe a few cars in the garage, and then actually accumulating the retirement plan. That's where many people limit the definition of the American dream. Now, I want to go back and really define what American dream is in my understanding, in my research. So it was only in the that a historian actually tried to demystify this idea of the American dream. You know, try to veer away from the classic definition that people have come to give to the definition of the American dream. And I think he has written a book. I forgot the title, but he was saying in the book that, in fact, many people have associated the American dream with upward mobility, which means socioeconomic prosperity. So, which means by defining the American dream that way, people have veered from the right definition of the American dream. And I do agree wholeheartedly. Why? Because during my research and my understanding of what really it means, the American dream, I've come to determine that the American dream is not what we have come to know. The classic definition about having a good job, having a white picket fenced home, and even having a retirement plan. That's not really what the definition of the American dream is. In fact, based on my research and my deeply analysis of what it means to the American dream. So I defined it by going back with what is called the Declaration of Independence. There's a passage in that Declaration of Independence that says that everybody has the right of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's just hold there for a little bit. Let's hold the idea of the pursuit of happiness. Let's underline that sentence, or at least that segment a little bit. The pursuit of happiness. It's in the Declaration of Independence. If we ask ourselves what it is that it is the pursuit of happiness, that's when we will start to see a little bit clearer of what the definition of the American dream might mean. Now, I kind of went back to the period where the founding fathers or the signers of the Declaration were thinking. Did they lack the vocabulary before they used pursuit rather than attainment? And I'm sure that by that time they really ponder on those vocabulary. Is it that the American, or at least, everybody has the right to attain happiness or to pursue happiness? And that's where the distinction takes place. You see, it's not about attaining, because they would have used the term attainment of happiness. But did they use that term? They used the term pursuit. As it comes down to the American dream, we can clearly see that the core of the idea, the essential definition of the American dream is that pursuing of something. And I have to say that my definition, the way that I've come to define the American dream, is simply the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. I want to repeat that so that it becomes clear, so that we see what really that means. It is the American dream. It is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. What does that really mean? It means that if you are working on something ideal, something that is worthwhile, something that is unique, something that is yours, as long as you are working on that thing, you are actually pursuing your American dream, or you are living your American dream. How does that have to do with the universal dream? You see, everybody has the right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then leaning into the pursuit of happiness. Everybody has that right. Although the Declaration of Independence is a document proper to the United States, but I believe that the essence of that right is of everybody living. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you are in America or in a different country. You can be living in a small village of Africa, of Cameroon, that's where I'm from. You can still be living there and still have the right of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. So, which means, although the American dream is proper kind of to American because that document was signed in America, but the principle applies to almost everybody living. And again, it doesn't matter where you live. So, which means when you see the essence of the American dream, it's not just in the geographic area of America that can apply. That's why I put it as the universal dream, which means you can be anywhere as long as you are pursuing, you are progressing into your a worthy ideal. Again, the definition being the progressive realization of something worldwide, the progressive realization of an ideal. So if you are, no matter where you are, no matter the continent, no matter the country, no matter the village or the state, whatever, wherever you are, if you are working onto something worthwhile, and I believe that at what point you are living your universal dream. So that's why I put it in the book, The Power of Your One Thing, the book that I recently published. And the idea that I put it in that book is because I really want to go back to the definition of walking into something that is unique, that is ideal. So in The Power of Your One Thing, I kind of believe that every single human being has that one thing in them. You can say that your creator put that in you or you were bestowed at birth, but anybody living has something. Some people would call it the talent, some people would call it the strength, some people would call it anything, but there is the one thing that defines you, that is your thing. And that's what the book, The Power of Your Thing, kind of depicts, the idea that everybody has it. Now, how can you live your universal dream? You can live your universal dream first by determine or by discover or at least bring to the surface that one thing that is yours. And in my book, I talk about how you can discover that one thing. Let's go back when we started school in our formative years. When we still kids, we starting school, maybe kindergarten or maybe the first grade or second grade. Right off the bat, there are some subject that we are almost naturally good at, right? Some subject that we are naturally good at. Now the question is, where did that being good at one subject come from? So knowing that we're just starting school, we're just starting getting exposure to the knowledge, to the vocabulary, to anything that life has to teach us. But yet there are some subject. It could be math, it could be history, it could be literature, it could be just about any subject. I used to have that subject for myself. And anybody, if you recall your very first year in school, second year, there were some subject, it could be one or two, that you were almost natural at. You didn't put lots of effort, but you were doing quite well in those subjects. You see, so those are kind of the where your one thing lies. In those things that you were kind of natural at, because it was in fact deposited in you by your creator or by anything that you believe in. So for me, I believe that there's somebody that is higher than me that may have put some functionality in me that has created me, that have made me who I am today. So which means that person, that creation has deposited in me something that was quite natural. It was that inclination. So that's how we can discover our one thing. And the idea is once you discover it now, some of us might be a little bit older now. We're no longer young. We're no longer little in the kindergarten's first or second grade. So which means we have passed that moment long ago. But the idea, what I'm trying to say here is if we go back, if we are in the situation and in a space or place where we are trying to discover that one thing, we can just imagine, we can just remember what used to happen when we started school. Those subjects, those disciplines, those things that were natural to us, the things that were fascinating to us. So basically, That's the contest of discovering our one thing. There are all many other exercises that we can actually use to discover our one thing. But just think about those things. So, which means every single human being has that one thing bestowed at birth. So, which means we do have that one thing in us. Unfortunately, a lot of us go through life and never discover that one thing, never discover what it is that we were born to do or born to contribute to this world. Unfortunately, many of us will go through life and never discover that. And usually that's a source of our unhappiness, of our unfulfillment in life, because we are just doing anything that comes on our in our path. We just grasp on anything. We just hang on to whatever that we see, or the environment that we are in, that we kind of like just adapt anything that might be just in our environment. And that's why so many in our society, we are very stressed, we are very depressed, because essentially we are not in alignment with the things that in us, our one thing. And once you discover that one thing, whether through remembering what were the subjects that you were kind of naturally good at from school, or any other exercise that I've described in my book, and you are working on that one thing, believe me, you will see that your life is much well rounded. There's some sort of balance, there's some sort of fulfillment. I'm not saying that everything would be easier. No, that's not what I'm saying. But it will be simple, because you know that this is who you are, this is what defines you. And as long as you're working on that one thing, you are actually living your universal dream. If you are in America, you can be said to be living in America. And the thing is, you can be in your country and still think that you are living your, maybe if it's Cameroon, because it's a country where I'm from, you can be said to be living your Cameroonian dream, or your Canadian dream, or your French dream, or your English dream. No matter where you are, you can term it that way, because again, the American dream is not other than the ability, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That means in America, that's a core. When we look at the Declaration of Independence, when we go back to the essence of what it means to live the American dream, it wasn't so much about a socio-economic prosperity per se. So that definition has only come as of late. So it's not really the core definition of the American dream, because in order to understand again the American dream, go back to the Declaration of Independence, and you lift that phrase. I just say to you that every human being has the right of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness, and do everything it's in the pursuit. Everything it's in the pursuit. As long as you are pursuing your one thing, you are living your American dream if you are in America. You are living your Cameroonian dream if you are in Cameroon. You are living your Mexican dream if you are in Mexico. You are living in Canadian dream, your Canadian dream if you are in Canada. No matter the country, you are living the dream of that country, as long as you are working on, you are pursuing that one thing. And I explain to you how you can discover that one thing. Again, for some of you who may have purchased my book, you would see the description of how you can discover those things. If you do not, I only in this podcast share with you how you can find that one thing, which by remembering some of the subjects of the past when you were starting school that were kind of natural to you, some of the fascinations that you had when you were kids. So those are the things that really are your one thing. See, so and then when you start working on it, when you start applying yourself consistently, believe me, you are living your dream, your universal dream, your American dream, any dream that you might want to consider. So that means that's the idea of the universal dream. It's simply universal because, again, it can apply to anybody who is in anywhere, because technically, and you see in its at its core, the American dream doesn't have to be limited geographically in America, you know, but the definition of what is the American dream at its core? I'm not talking about, of course, a social mobility or any social economic prosperity or any social, any upward mobility. I'm not talking about those. Those are kind of not even the definition of the American dream. Not those can be construed as the the kind of short-sightedness when it comes to the whole definition of the American dream. So discover your one thing, and that can be discovered by remembering some of the subjects that you used to be naturally good at when you were starting school, first grade, second grade, or even earlier in kindergarten. So those subjects are really where lies your one thing. And if you remember those subjects, if you remember those things and start to apply yourself and start to work consistently on that thing, not only you would come full circle being absolutely fulfilled because you are in alignment with that which is inside of you, that which defines you. You're in alignment. You would achieve that sort of classic, the old classic definition of the American dream, which is the social economic prosperity. Thereby, you can possibly even get to the point that you can buy the home, maybe with a white picket fence, you can have some retirement. But then that's not the definition. This is just the byproduct of pursuing your American dream, which is your one thing, the one thing that you were designed to be pursuing when you came here in this world on earth. You were designed for something unique. You were designed for something apart. You are not, there is no replica of you in this entire world. We are about 8 billions of us, or a little bit more. So there is no replica of you. There is nobody in this world that is exactly the blueprint of who you are. You are unique, so which means there's something unique about you that you can contribute in this world. What it is that you can contribute in your unique way in this world. That's where you can start to live that universal dream, that American dream, whatever dream you might think of, as long as you are pursuing that thing. Let's go back in kindergarten a little bit. Let's just hypothetically suppose that you have, by then, maybe your parents have seized that opportunity to know that, hey, you're good at math, or maybe you're good at history, you're good at literature, you're good at art, whatever that is, right? And then your parents had guided you to just focus on that. Yes, by the time that you reach 20 or whatever, you will be expert at your thing. Not only you'll be expert because you realize that our world today is moved by experts are the world, are those who are changing our world today. When you bring an expertise into the playing field of life, that's how you can move needle of life, that you can move things in life by bringing your expertise. You don't change the world by becoming average. And the idea of average is simply that when we have ignored those things, those inclination early on in life, now the school system requires us to be able to take the time and work on our weaknesses, which means some of the subject that we are not as good as. So we take the time to focus a little bit on the subjects that we are not so much as good at. What happens there is simply that we take the time from the things that we are already kind of naturally good, which if we had spent a lot of the time on those things, we will become expert quite easily and faster. But now we apply the time on subject that we are not as good. What happens in the end that we become average. In the end, we become average in life. And average doesn't change our world today. Average doesn't move the needle in changing the world or contributing in the greater extent to the world. So basically, that's how the school system, unfortunately, requires us to do, to kind of like average in all of the disciplines. So look for your one thing, focus on that one thing. Remember from early on, if there is one thing or two things that you believe that you were already naturally good at, and try to start working. It doesn't matter your age, really. So I often talk of a theory of 1,000 hours, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell in his book, I think, The Outlier, The Stories of Success. So in that book, he popularized the 10,000 hours. Just imagine if you discover your one thing and put 10,000 hours, on that thing, you would become an expert. That's what the theory says, that if you put 10,000 hours of anything, any endeavor, you do a deliberate practice on that endeavor, so you would become an expert. And believe me, by becoming an expert, you would not only get to that level of achievement, but then you will be quite fulfilled. Again, going back to the pursuit of happiness, you are happy when you are walking onto something that is deep in your heart, that makes your heart sing, that is in alignment with the core of who you are. And you can only be happy, or at least pursue that happiness, when you are working on those things. If you are doing things that is, and that's the reason why you're going to think, oftentimes, if we only limit the American dream to the pursuit of the upward mobility, which is the socio-economic prosperity, which is the material success, right? Having money and cars and homes, it would be difficult to know anybody who has achieved that to not feel fulfilled. But yet in our society, yet in our world today, we see a lot of people, especially in the world of entertainment today. How is it possible that somebody who has a lot of fame, a lot of money, a lot of a lot of material possession, can be less happy or less fulfilled? And that can be proven by seeing a lot of people who actually do stupid things or are addicted to things that you wonder, what are they looking in becoming addicted to? Drugs or this or that, whatever addiction that is. A lot of celebrities today are really checking in rehabs all the time, simply because there is a void inside themselves. Sometimes, yeah, you can be good and prosper materially, outwardly onto something, but it doesn't mean that it is something that is aligned with that which you are, that unique you. So you can work on anything that is outside of that thing, right? And you can still be good at it as long as you put the time, the effort. You can realize success with it. But does it mean that you are in alignment with the core of who you are? That's why we see a lot of people empty. We see a lot of people at the high stations in life who do stupid things, and we wonder, what is going on? These people are supposed to have it all. They have money, they have fame, they have possession. I mean, just about anything that you can imagine, the outward manifestation of success. But why are they doing the things that they do? It's simply because they're not in alignment with that one thing. And that one thing is the thing that was deposited in you by your creator, by whoever that you believe that you come from. If you come from a rock, whatever, evolved from, you come here for a purpose. If you're not pursuing that purpose, if you're not in alignment with that purpose, you would not feel as fulfilled. So that's why by pursuing that unique one thing, you are actually living your American dream. Thereby, you are living your universal dream if you live outside the United States. The principle remains the same. So, which means the topic of today, the universal dream, is simply the idea that as long as you're pursuing your one thing, it doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter where you are in life, as long as you are pursuing that one thing that was bestowed in you at birth by your creator, by anything that you believe that you come from, as long as you are pursuing it, you are actually living your universal dream. Say American dream if you live in America. Say Canadian dream if you live in Canada. Say Mexican dream if you live in Mexico. Whatever the country, say the country's dream, and you will be living at that. So that's what I want to share with you today. That's just something that is dear to me, and simply because I included that in my book, The Power of Your One Thing, that I recently published. And it's a book, and it says just as the title says, the power of your one thing, simply that everybody has that one thing in themselves, one thing that they were born with, one thing that was bestowed at birth by your creator. Everybody has that thing. You can call it your talent, you can call it your purpose, you can call it your strength, but every single human being has that one thing. And as long as you discover that one thing, whether you are young or old, and start working on that one thing, you are actually achieving, or you are actually living your universal dream. Again, thank you so much for tuning in to Speaking with Elvis Podcast. And if you haven't subscribed in this podcast, and I exhort you to do so, because that what really encourages us, that's what really make this show going, to be able to see that the message that we are sharing is landing on the right ground, on the further ground, that it can help you. Maybe an insight that is being shared here is helping you to improve something in your life. And you can even share that with another person, because it may not apply to your life directly, but indirectly it can affect somebody else, because by sharing what you have learned with your family, your environment, your friends, you are actually impacting other people in ways that you don't even know. That's why by subscribing and by engaging with this show, so we are actually together achieving something that is worthwhile. Thereby, maybe we are pursuing our one thing. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in with Speaking with Elvis podcast. Thank you.